Here we go. We are live. All right. So, Greg Cloumans here, and I'm with Rochelle Voth, and we're going to be going off on a riff here this morning and seeing where it takes us. But I think one of the things that we want to talk about is this whole idea of enlightened leadership or awakening the leader within, and mindfulness, really becoming more of a conscious leader, which I would say includes, really having a conversation about enlightened leadership or awakening the leader within, and then the practice of being a mindful leader. So that's what I thought we'd talk about today.
Yeah, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this with you today.
Of course.
And I would love to hear what an enlightened leadership definition is. What is that? And I know you're passionate about this, so maybe just sharing with us what that is, what you see that to be an enlightened leader or enlightened leadership.
Got it. So, depending on where I am in the moment, it could probably be different, but I think the constant is the enlightened leader really has a deep sense of knowing or awakening of who they are. And so often, what I've seen kind of in the business world as a business coach is, whether it be marketing or branding or an organization or leadership, so often what happens is the question comes back to, who am I? And am I from a marketing point of view and trying to brand from a place of authenticity, or who I am as a leader? But the question is always the same, is who am I? And what I see is a lot of marketing companies or business consultants come to that, but they really don't, I don't feel, have a proper way of navigating or helping the leader awaken to that question. Because it's not something that can be answered. It's not something that can be explained, through a definition. It really is through a direct experience of knowing, or a conscious direct experience of knowing, is how I language it.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds as though part of your passion in this is helping people really come into, through direct experience, getting a greater sense of who am I.
For sure. Yes. And, I would also define enlightened leadership as not a definition, but I would say enlightened leadership is what's possible for leadership. And, I think we all agree, most people agree that, gosh, I could take better care of myself and lose weight, or I could take better care of myself and eat better, or I could take better care of myself and exercise more, or I could be a better listener, or I could give people more feedback at work as a manager or whatever. So people know that they could be doing better. And I think within all of us, we know that we have a capacity or the potential of being much greater than we are. And so enlightened leadership is really an invitation to, I believe, what's possible as a leader. But it's not for the faint of heart by any means. Because, part of that journey really is confronting all of their illusions or delusions of who or what they have come to believe as themselves or who they are.
So with that in mind, why would somebody want to do that? What would be the propelling factor to get out of your own way, so to speak?
I think that's a great question. And I think at some level on the planet, it's happening, because what's happening is that people are starting to question leadership the way it is.
Yeah, for sure.
And the question is bringing forth this doubt, or maybe this inquiry of, is there a better way, or is there another way? Because I think we're pretty sick and tired of the type of leadership that's out there. And even in schools, Harvard and Wharton and many of the Ivy League business schools, they've been scratching their heads for, the last 10, 20, 30 years about how to get just leadership out. Forget about enlightened leadership. And so, a lot of it has been around, tactics and development and skill and all of this. But enlightened leadership is really about creating a wise leader, not somebody who just has more skills or tactics or tricks up their sleeve. So, anyways, these are some of my thoughts. But to answer your question, I think what happens is that when we try to approach the same old questions in business, the same old questions in teams and running efficiently, we see the same old problems in the world in terms of social justice or economic challenges or political, that we start scratching our heads and we look at how do we get along better, okay? How do we do the right thing? And right, I don't mean like right and wrong, I mean wise. You know, what's the wisest choice available to us? And so I think what happens is enlightened leadership, again, it's what's possible for leadership. And what happens is enlightened leadership invites people into asking a different question, invites them into a different inquiry, rather than maybe traditional leadership, which is more performance-based or profit-based or growth-based. You know, enlightened leadership looks at maybe how much is enough.
Yeah. So it sounds, I mean, just to maybe look at that a little more deeply, is that you're clarifying through this ability to kind of lead from a more wise or, experientially based place. Sounds like that might be driven by a greater good of intention, like a bigger sense of intentionality about what you're doing rather than just being based on where we're going to get to or the performance quota. And how does somebody cultivate that? How does somebody come into an awareness of that?
Got it. Well, there's certainly nobody has an exclusivity on enlightenment, or any of that. And I think the paths are many. But enlightenment, at least from my point of view, is the de-identification of what one has come to know as themselves. Okay? And that I see so much of the stress that a leader has is trying to perpetuate this identity, okay, or perpetuate looking good, being the good leader rather than being the wise leader, and so that's what's come to mind.
Yeah. So, through what practices or through what forum would you help someone come into a greater sense of wisdom to lead from that place? Got it.
So, me personally, I'm an advocate of meditation and mindfulness. And so, I think those are two really great ways. Again, I don't have any exclusivity on any of these paths. And there are a lot of teachers out there and a lot of people that probably could teach it, better than myself. So I say find a meditation teacher, find a mindfulness teacher, find a path that is suitable, but make sure it's a wisdom path.
Yeah.
And what I mean by a wisdom path is something that turns one inward and stops them from looking outward of gathering more data. See, an enlightened leader is not somebody that goes out and reads more books. Is not somebody who goes and takes a leadership development seminar.
Yeah.
It's the person that can take the time and sit with themselves and look within and to start to recognize who they are and how they show up in the world. And it's through that process of self-reflection that self-correction comes, okay? And also the discernment around not reacting, but being more responsive to what's happening. So those are a couple thoughts on that.
Yeah. So where would somebody begin to seek out that path? What would you suggest in terms of their ability to practice meditation or begin to practice mindfulness?
Well, again, I think most meditation points to that de-identification. So, depending on where somebody is, where they are in the world or whatever, Vipassana retreats, Zen retreats, mindfulness retreats, a lot of in the corporate world, my understanding at least is that there is emotional intelligence work is the sneaky way of getting what I'm talking about here into corporations, because meditation's still a dirty word. Mindfulness is starting to become an everyday word and being much more receptive. But even the sneakier path is, start to become more curious about what is this thing called emotional intelligence, and allow that to be maybe a path to enter into at the very least, because I think all of those paths ultimately end up in the same place.
Yeah. So if you were working with someone and helping them develop their capacity to be a wise leader, what would that look like? Would you teach and offer meditation with them in collaboration with whatever else they might be seeking on their path, or how would you support that as they were coming into that?
Well, they could certainly start their own private practice, and that's wonderful. My experience around awakening and enlightenment is it can happen one of two ways. One is I'm out weeding the garden and doing something very repetitive, and through the grace of something greater than myself, there's this sudden direct experience, like the universe parts. And a perfect example of this is a guy named Eckhart Tolle, who was sitting on a park bench, and he had one of these, whams, just sitting there doing nothing, And then there's the other approach, which is more purposeful, and many what I would call practitioners throughout history have known that to practice and meditate and then go out into the world, whether it be in farming or in the corporate world, the modern world, is very, very good, but it's not conducive to really enlightenment or awakening. And so that's why it's important, I believe, for the leader to really commit to at least once a year, if not twice, to embrace some sort of intensive training where they'll go away for a week or 10 days or 3 or 4 days at the minimum and immerse themselves in an environment that allows them to meet themselves or to meet the truth, whatever that is. Okay? And so that would be my advice around that.
Yeah, great. Well, so as this person is cultivating their wise leadership and on their path, what do you think that ultimately creates? Like, as a mindful leader, if somebody is operating in a mindful leadership way, what would that actually look like? And what is the difference between that and a mindless leader?
So I just kind of take a breath and all this. With all my excitement about talking about this, I can only speak to my vision. Okay? And my vision would be that there is a centeredness and a calmness within the individual that has the ability to make better decisions for themselves, for their team, for the world, for the planet, out of this deeper truth, if you will. Okay? And so, I want to say a little bit about this is, part of this de-identification is there's two primary attachments that people become fixated in. And part of the de-identification and the two primary stumbling blocks for awakening are the body and the mind. Okay? The body and the mind. And for each person, each person is more prone to having difficulty or obstacles overcoming one or the other. You know, my personal challenge was the mind. You know, I have a very powerful mind, which is wonderful, but it also becomes my greatest obstacle along the path. Okay, and so how is it an obstacle? Well, the obstacle is that I believe that what I am is my body. You know, what I am is my body. What I am is my pain. What I am is my looks. What I am is my looking good. You know, what I am is my physical limitations. You know, what I am is the biochemistry in my brain is why I am the way I am. And then, of course, the mind, we get these impressions from outside that come in to the mind, and these now create thought forms, and these forms we become identified with, and we have no ability to distinguish the form from experience. And I start to believe that who I am is the thought form, or at least it's clouding, and I can't experience life directly. Okay? So the leader has done the work that separates this so that he or she is not showing up in the organization or in life with all of these filters interfering that are distorting and causing poor decisions for themselves, for the team, for the world, for the planet, and so on.
Beautiful. So this person would really, as they cultivate this, have a greater sense of this de-identification, where they can really see more clearly into the moment-to-moment direct experience, so that the decisions are arising from that rather than the cloud of the perceptions of thought.
Yes, yes. And, you know, here's a practice, you know, for somebody who wants to kind of take a running jump at this before going into an intensive or whatever, is just start to ask yourself from the time you wake up until the time you step out into the world and into the office and into the board meetings and all that, is ask yourself, who am I in this moment? Not like the truth, not like, you know, the ultimate reality, but to start with what's real for you in the moment. Like, who am I now? And what I call that getting a piece of the layer of the onion. Okay? And so it's, you know, a lot of this inquiry of who am I is that, and this is very normal for all of us, is we try to get the right answer. We want to know, and so I'll start reading books on enlightenment or spirituality and all that, which actually becomes more barriers to overcome along my path of awakening, rather than if I just started waking up every day and asked myself, who am I? Who is it driving to the office right now? You know, who am I? Well, I'm the one that is feeling very competitive, you know, or who I am is the one who's mad as hell, or who I am is the one that feels betrayed, or who I am is the one who, gosh, you know, I'm really noticing who I am is extremely competitive, you know? And so I start to notice those things, not like good or bad, okay? But I start to notice those things, and out of that noticing and recognizing, I'm now at choice. Remember, like I said, enlightened leadership is, I believe, what's possible is leadership. I'm at choice of continuing to be competitive, or I have the discernment or the realization that, I'm currently very identified with being competitive, not like it's good, bad, or right or wrong. Is that serving me in the moment? Okay. But beyond that, for true awakening, to understand that who I am is not competitive. Like like to be curious, to go deeper and to let that go. And going, if I let that go, I'm kind of curious who else would show up. And then what else shows up might be, well, gosh, you know, when that goes away, I'm noticing who I am is really accepting. Okay? But I don't hold on to that either. I don't hold on to that either. I go, wow, this is different. And remember, enlightened leadership is about what's possible. And so all these things become possibilities, but it's not enlightenment. So I'm not interested in them, because there's enlightenment and then there's leadership. Enlightenment is what's possible. Leadership is what's possible. Enlightenment is de-identifying with all of these possibilities so that I'm actually in a place of pure awareness, and that I can create whatever out of all these possibilities that I'm familiar with.
Yeah. So when you're, how would you maybe define or give us a greater understanding to that pure awareness? Because I think there is something to that when we are really in the truth of the moment, whatever it is that's here, my competitiveness, my ability to accept, my decision that I have to make, all of that. How do you capture the essence of that, or how would you define that coming into possibility?
I just see it as a blank canvas, and a blank canvas I use the blank canvas is what is occurring now. It's what's happening now. Without labels, without anything. And then from that point, looking at what's necessary in the moment, depending on the agreements, depending on what it is that one wants to create, and rather than, so it's creating from that possibility in the moment.
Yeah, I like that there is a greater sense when we're in the blankness of the moment, that we can really listen to what needs to get painted or what needs to get followed in that moment, and really listen to that.
Yeah, it's living in possibility, and leadership is about creating a future that doesn't exist. It's not here yet. Okay? That's what enlightened leadership is. The type of leadership that we're currently living is actually a continuation of the past. Okay? So this pure awareness is no longer driven by the past. It's no longer out to save the world.
Right.
It's like here. And now what's possible?
Yeah.
I know it may sound strange. It may sound, some people might be scratching their head and going, this is kind of nutty. But I promise you that what I'm sharing is very real.
Yeah. So, where do we start?
Where do we start? Well, for years I've offered these retreats where people go into, once or twice a year and really look in the mirror, or what we call polish the mirror, and to do this inquiry, to start peeling away the layers of the onion, okay? And so, like I said, whether it be someone else's retreat or one of my retreats, I encourage people to pursue that and look at peeling away the layers of the onion. There's many great sages that said, if you can just sit with the inquiry of who am I for 2 years, without any other thought, you get to the same place, okay? The challenge is that I can do that for an hour a day early in the morning or at some point during the day, but then I go out into the world and that contemplation gets disturbed. It's very hard to maintain that who am I in everything I do for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you could, and it's a good place to start.
Yeah. Well, and so starting could look like the retreats, but starting is also those questions that we can pose to ourselves, or my sense of that would be the questions are at any moment, whether I'm driving or I'm working or I'm with someone or I'm eating, that I could be asking these questions along the way.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I would also say this, that the world needs enlightened leaders. It clearly needs it. But what we need is people who desire enlightened leadership. Okay? So it's not something that, like even we're having this conversation and we might put this out on the internet and all of that. But this is not something that we're selling. In fact, enlightened leadership or the path of enlightenment, I actually don't even encourage. It is a challenging endeavor. It is more challenging than anything one would take on in their life. Hands bar. Okay? I'm a martial artist by background, and, one of the things that I know is that, I've encouraged some of these guys to take some of my retreats because I know that as tough as they are, that these retreats will be the most challenging thing they've ever done in their life. Okay? So enlightened leadership is not for the faint of heart, and in fact, it's not something that can be sold. It's something that it's something that someone feels called to, that, gosh, yes, I want it. And here's what I would say is that it is possible. Like what I'm talking about here and what I've had the experience of is I've had the privilege of being there, okay, and supporting people in their own awakening, okay? Like little old me, nobody, okay? I've had more people have direct experiences than, people who have, this lineage in this little place over here in the mountaintop and all that. Little old me, through this practice of inquiry, of staying with a question for 3.5, 4 days, have a direct experience of their own true nature, okay? And it's that direct experience that shifts, that breaks something open in their beingness and how they show up in the world. That's just the beginning of enlightened leadership. It's not the end. In martial arts, we kind of have this saying, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Getting your black belt is not the finish line. Getting your black belt is just the beginning. Enlightened leadership is just the beginning. It's just the beginning. Oh, having an awakening, of whatever depth is just the beginning. Yeah. Now you know
what's possible.
What's possible.
Yeah.
And now you know better, and now you lead better.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the impact that potentially it has for the greater good on the more global scale that you're talking about.
Yeah. And so what I would encourage anybody who's finds themselves interested or intrigued about this is to stop looking outside of themselves for more what I call indirect knowledge. Okay, and in my retreats, I often distinguish this indirect knowledge versus direct knowledge. And so enlightened leadership in the path is looking for direct knowledge, a direct experience. And so, well, what the heck is that? Well, from the time we were born, we begin to be told who we are or what we are by mother, father, church, state, synagogue, Fortune 500, Glamour magazine, whatever it is. We're bombarded with this information of who I am or who you are as a woman, or as a little girl, all right? And all these imprints, okay, we've now embodied, and we've come to believe that that's who we are. But deep in our hearts, our souls, and our spirits, we're unsatisfied with that who I am. And the problem is that we continue, because all we know is to continue to look outside myself for more of who I am. So if I just made more money, or if I just had more clients, or I had more degrees, or I had more education, or I had a bigger business, or I had more employees, or I had a better car, a bigger house, or more information, more knowledge, more certifications. It's all outside of myself. I keep searching that wonderful relationship. in hopes what individuals doing is they're already looking for who they are. There's this innate longing within all of us. The only challenges are looking in the wrong places. And even if they found the truth in a book, in a lecture, in a seminar, in a Dharma talk, okay, it's still outside of themselves. It can only point to if they have the courage to look within. Okay? So sooner or later they have to stop looking out. You got to stop reading books. You got to stop all of this. And you have to find a practice that turns you inward. And to start to recognize all of these things that you've been told about who and what you are. And have the courage to embrace them. And as you embrace them, there's this dissolving or falling away. And in that process, you're left with a kernel of truth, of who you are, or an access point. Okay? I was doing a practice yesterday, and I was sharing with this person is that I see that who or what we are doorways. And there's all these doorknobs on them. And those doorknobs are likened to those onions. And it doesn't matter which doorknob you take, whether it be the arrogant one, or the spiritual one, or the greedy one, it doesn't matter. Each one has the possibility of cracking the door open. But in the beginning, what happens is we're afraid that who I am is the doorknob, not what's the possibility that lives with the door open.
Yeah, that's a beautiful analogy and very helpful to, give a visual to what that inner work really is. Yeah.
Cool. Well, so how is this for you?
This beautiful. Your passion exudes through your pores. Lovely to be witness to, and just to hear the clarity of the knowing. And it's empowering for people to hear this, and for people to have a direct teaching with you about this, so that maybe that points a little bit more inwardly for them to help them investigate this. So
nice.
Very cool.
Nice. Cool. Well, thank you for being with me in this conversation.
You're welcome. Is there anything we didn't hit that you wanted to hit?
I don't think so. I kind of trust what happened, and it's good. So let me just turn the recorder off for a second, and then we can